Hey, welcome back to Energy Physio. Continuing on through the Ultimate Guide to Sports Medicine, moving into treatment options. All right, so this is page 7. So we're pretty good ways into the article here, getting into some treatment options, and this is beyond your home treatment. So we already talked about the Rice method and why we think that may not be the best thing anymore. And maybe how we can replace that. And there's a bigger conversation to have about active recovery. So if you're, asking those questions like, well, he's saying this isn't great anymore, what do we do? There's a bigger conversation. And once I wrap up this thing, we're going to go through the whole deal on what it looks like from injury to return to sport, how to manage pain and injury on your own. And so I don't want to leave anything just hanging out there. We're going to bring this back full circle. But talking about treatment options to help you get back in the game and win, no doubt, everybody wants that. And so, if you haven't been able to find relief with home treatment options for your sports injury, you might need professional help, and that's true. And so their focus is always having an athlete return to his or her sport activity. Your initial appointment or urgent care visit, a sports medicine specialist may recommend a variety of treatment options depending on your specific injury. So let's stop right there. When we think about a variety, we think of lots of different options. But if we really break this down to what we know via track record, what we see people coming out of doctor's visits with, what they come out of PT with, the variety is really not that much. Okay, so you're going to get medications, physical therapy, surgery, or recommend that you not do anything. And we can see that in their list down here. These are their treatment options for sports injuries. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, or NSAIDs. That's medication. Home exercise program for strengthening muscles. That's physical therapy for sure, or maybe the doc even gives you that. Physical therapy to increase strength and flexibility. That's PT, obviously. Immobilization devices such as crutches or walking. That's inactivity. That falls in the inactivity category, which we now know, like, hey, inactivity, rest, not good. Full-on rest is not the answer. Steroid injections, more medications, or in extreme cases, surgery. Obviously, that fits in the surgeries category. So we're seeing here the variety is not too variable. There's just 4 things that you're going to end up getting: medications, surgery, physical therapy, or some device that helps you not move like you should be moving. The next thing I want to talk about is PT's problem. Physical therapy's big problem. And this is just kind of the general conception of physical therapy throughout the industry. And it's really bad, and it's physical therapy's fault. So I'm just going to take ownership of that. And it's this idea that if you strengthen the right muscles, and physical therapy has become strengthening muscles and improving flexibility. And the big problem with that is that you can have a 5 out of 5 strength quad, but you can't do a squat and get out of a chair. So what good is muscle strength if you don't have movement strength? And so this idea that PT strengthens muscles just pushes the fact that most of the time physical therapy really dials in and localizes on whatever hurts, when really the problems are far off site, and the biggest problem is movement, which doesn't ever get completely addressed. And so we need to do a lot better job as clinicians educating physical therapy should not be for strengthening muscles and improving flexibility. It should be for improving mobility, your ability to move altogether globally, and strengthening movement. So the idea of rehab is how can we improve mobility and movement so then we can set our patients up to return to sport through detailed strength and conditioning programming, protocols, and plans in a way that makes sense. And that brings up this idea of strength versus pain, okay? So if physical therapy is to strengthen, then that means that people have pain because they're missing strength, and this just isn't true. I've treated 90-year-olds who are weaker than skim milk, but they don't have pain. They're just deconditioned. They can't get up out of their chair. They just need to be strengthened. And so the idea that strength is a health problem really isn't. Strength is a fitness problem. If you are weak, you need higher levels of fitness, you need a personal trainer, you need a coach. But to say that you are in pain here because you lack strength here is not true. Strength is a fitness problem. It's not a health problem. If we are going to PT to strengthen muscles, You're not going to solve any problems. You got to strengthen movement. You got to solve mechanical restrictions. But that brings me to the next point, and that is strength and conditioning may be the biggest missing link in physical therapy. Clinics aren't set up for strength and conditioning. Insurances aren't set up to return somebody to sport. We get claim denials all the time saying this lacks medical necessity, which just really blows my mind. Like, hey, this 18-year-old's activity of daily living is football. And so how can you say that this isn't medically necessary to return him to football? And so, we've kind of become victimized from the system that's in place, that clinics don't set up for strength and conditioning, probably largely in part because insurances don't reimburse due to lack of medical necessity for strength and conditioning. But the truth is, if we don't follow dedicated programs for strength and conditioning, our return to sport is not going to look anything like return to sport. It's going to look like sending somebody back exactly the way they came in, just with less pain. And it's no surprise when they come back through our doors 3, 6, a year later with the same problem. And that's because we sent them out pain-free. We had them slowly return to sport, whatever that means. And we didn't actually solve movement and mobility problems that are what got them there in the first place. And so this idea of treatment options is, here's what we really need to understand. You need to find a physical therapist that understands what your sport is. You need to find a doctor that understands what your sport is. They need to know the rigors that are involved in getting back to that sport. And at the end of the day, strengthening muscles won't get you there. Improving flexibility won't get you there. Strengthening certain things will not decrease your pain. What we have to understand is that once you are pain-free, we need to be focusing on improving your mobility to the point where you can move correctly, at which point we have to be able to interject strength and conditioning into your program. We have to build tissue tolerance and resiliency through loading. We have to develop movement technique through increased metabolic demand, like you're breathing hard, your heart rate's jacked a mile high. Can you still move in a way that makes sense? And then we have to be able to put athletes under speed. None of this we can do in the standard clinic. And without doing that, we're sending somebody out to a sport that requires load, metabolic stress, and speed demand with a ton of unknown variables. Okay, like the closest thing we can get in the clinic is a box jump, right? Which requires a lot of mobility, movement control, and speed. But yet we haven't even been able to load this person beyond body weight. Just jumping increases the force of your body weight by 9 or 10 times. And so the current model we live in doesn't make sense. So if you're a consumer looking for a way to return to sport in a way that makes sense, you got to find a place that understands what your sport is, what is required of that sport, and that can give you a plan to get you out of pain, solve your movement and mobility problems, and also program strength and conditioning for you to return to sport. And once you're there, you're there. There's no slow return. It's, hey, I'm playing basketball. Hey, I'm going back to play football. I'm playing tennis. Doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to run a 5K. Whenever you step back into that sport, you should be able to do it. That's just it. So, shout out to Zach Wagner. Buddy of mine, Cash PT, started a Facebook group dedicated to integrating strength and conditioning into physical therapy programs, which I think is crucial. I think it's critical, and I think if we can do it, then we're going to see big changes in the medical community as far as return to sport and sports medicine injuries. So stay tuned. Got another video coming up continuing through the Ultimate Guide to Sports Medicine. Hope to see you there.